What does freedom mean to you? And more importantly, what would it mean to a nation like Cuba? Freedom, a term often used, but its depth and significance are not always fully understood. It's a concept that reverberates globally, a universal aspiration, an essential human right. Imagine a world where you can express your thoughts freely without fear of retribution, where political diversity is not only accepted, but encouraged. A world where economic opportunities are accessible to all, not just a privileged few. This is what freedom signifies. This is its global context. Now let's bring this idea closer to home, to the island of Cuba. The concept of freedom in Cuba bears additional layers of complexity. For decades, the Cuban people have yearned for these basic rights, for this range of political freedoms, for these economic opportunities. Freedom, a simple word with profound implications, especially in the context of Cuba. To understand the depth of Cuba's yearning for freedom, we need to delve into its history. Let's first step back to the late 15th century. Columbus's arrival in Cuba in 1492 marked the beginning of Spanish colonization. This period was characterized by the exploitation of the island's resources and the subjugation of its indigenous people. The Spanish rule, which spanned over 4 centuries, was a dark time in Cuba's history, but it also sparked the initial flame of resistance, a flame that has only grown brighter over the centuries. Fast forward to the late 19th century, the Cuban War for Independence, a pivotal moment in Cuba's history. This was a hard-fought battle against Spanish rule, led by Cuban patriots who dreamed of a free Cuba. Their victory in 1898 marked the end of Spanish rule, but it was a bittersweet moment, as the United States, under the guise of assistance, established its own control over the island. The 20th century saw the rise of the communist regime under Fidel Castro. Castro's revolution in 1959 promised freedom and equality, but instead delivered a different kind of oppression. The iron-fisted rule suppressed dissent, controlled the media, and limited economic freedom. The Cuban people, once hopeful for a better future, found themselves trapped in a cycle of oppression all over again. These historical events have shaped the Cuban people's perception of freedom. Freedom for them is not just about political independence. It is about the right to express themselves, the right to economic opportunity, and the right to live without fear. It is about breaking free from the chains of oppression, whether they come from a foreign power or from within their own government. And so, the struggle continues as Cuba continues to yearn for the freedom it has long been denied. Since 1959, Cuba has been under a communist regime, a system that has significantly impacted the freedom of its people. For over 6 decades, this regime has exerted a profound influence on the political, economic, and social aspects of life in Cuba. Under communism, Cuba's political landscape has been characterized by a lack of freedom of speech. Citizens are often restricted from expressing dissenting opinions, and those who do risk severe consequences. The regime controls the media, limiting access to independent information. This lack of freedom to express and explore diverse viewpoints has stifled intellectual growth and created an environment of fear and self-censorship. In terms of economic freedom, the communist regime has also imposed stringent limitations. Most industries are state-owned, leaving little room for private entrepreneurship. Economic opportunities are often dictated by the state, leaving individuals with little control over their own economic destiny. This has resulted in widespread poverty, with many Cubans struggling to meet their basic needs, despite the government's claims of equality and shared wealth. The regime's impact is also deeply felt in the social realm. Restrictions on basic human rights, such as freedom of assembly and movement, have curtailed the ability of Cubans to engage in social and cultural activities freely. The state's control over education and healthcare has led to a homogenized society where individuality is often suppressed. Despite these limitations, or perhaps because of them, the Cuban people's spirit remains unbroken. Their desire for freedom, for the right to speak their minds, to shape their own economic futures, and to celebrate their unique individuality has only grown stronger. They continue to dream of a day when they can enjoy the full spectrum of freedoms that many of us take for granted. In the face of such restrictions, the Cuban people's desire for freedom has only grown stronger. Their resilience and determination are a testament to the human spirit's enduring pursuit of liberty. The Cuban diaspora has a crucial role to play in the fight for freedom in their homeland. This group, consisting of individuals and families who have made the difficult choice to leave Cuba, carries the stories, the heartache, and the hope of a nation yearning for freedom. From the shores of Miami to the bustling streets of Madrid, the Cuban diaspora is a living testament to the resilience and spirit of the Cuban people. They've made new homes in foreign lands, yet their hearts remain deeply connected to the island they left behind. They carry with them not just the memories of their homeland, but also a vision of what Cuba can and should be, a place where freedom, democracy, and human rights are respected and upheld. Across the globe, these individuals and communities are using their voices and resources to advocate for change in Cuba. They're raising awareness about the hardships faced by those still living under the communist regime, and they're pushing for international support to bring about a peaceful transition to democracy. From organizing rallies and protests to establishing platforms and forums for open dialogue about Cuba's future, the Cuban diaspora is a beacon of hope and a driving force for change. They're not just sharing their stories, they're amplifying the silenced voices of those still in Cuba, making sure their cries for freedom do not go unheard. The Cuban diaspora is also engaging with policymakers and influential figures, lobbying for policies and interventions that support the Cuban people's quest for freedom. They're utilizing social media, traditional media, and personal networks to shine a spotlight on the oppressive regime and the urgent need for change. The diaspora's role, however, extends beyond advocacy. They're providing financial support to their families back home, contributing to the survival and resilience of communities in Cuba. They're fostering cultural exchange, keeping the rich and vibrant Cuban culture alive, and sharing it with the world. But perhaps the most significant role the Cuban diaspora plays is that of being bearers of hope. Their continued efforts and unwavering belief in a free Cuba inspire those still in Cuba and the international community alike. Through their stories, the world gets a glimpse of the freedom that Cuba deserves. Change is possible, but it requires collective effort. Imagine a Cuba where freedom is not just a dream, but a reality. A place where the liberty to express one's thoughts and ideas isn't met with fear of reprisal. A Cuba where the pursuit of prosperity is not hindered by oppressive policies, but propelled by the ingenuity and resilience of its people. This is a future that is within our grasp, a potential that can be unlocked with our combined efforts. So, how can we contribute to this noble cause? How can we support the Cuban people in their pursuit of freedom? Well, there are several ways, and each one of us can play a part in this journey towards liberation. Firstly, we can raise awareness. And now, in an era where information is as fluid as it has ever been, this is easier than ever. Use social media platforms to share stories and news about Cuba's struggle for freedom. Engage in conversations, discussions, and debates to shed light on the realities that often get overlooked or ignored. Secondly, we can lobby our governments. Yes, political advocacy has the power to enact real, tangible change. Reach out to your local representatives, senators, members of parliament, or any relevant political figures. Urge them to prioritize the issue of freedom in Cuba in their foreign policies. Remember, one letter, one call, one email can make a difference. Finally, we can support organizations that are dedicated to promoting freedom in Cuba. There are numerous nonprofit organizations, advocacy groups, and foundations that are tirelessly working to provide aid, legal support, and resources to the Cuban people. Make a donation, volunteer your time, or simply spread the word about their efforts. For instance, there's the Cuban American National Foundation, an organization that has been advocating for human rights and democratic change in Cuba for over 4 decades. Or the Center for a Free Cuba, an independent, nonpartisan institution dedicated to promoting human rights and a transition to democracy and the rule of law in Cuba. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are countless other organizations and initiatives that are making a difference. Find one that resonates with you and lend your support. And remember, this isn't just about helping Cuba. This is about standing up for freedom, for human rights, for democracy. It's about believing in a world where every individual has the right to live without fear, to speak without censorship, and to dream without boundaries. This journey towards a free Cuba may be long and fraught with challenges, but with determination, solidarity, and collective action, we can help turn this dream into a reality. Remember, every voice counts, and together we can help Cuba achieve the freedom it has long yearned for.